Hi, friends. I'm back. I hope everyone had a very fabulous week so far. It's only Tuesday. I hope everybody's been having a great week. Um, I was thinking a lot today about the topic of like system recalibration. I wanted to talk about that because I feel like we're going through a very pivotal time right now in history where a lot, if not all, of our systems. So you talk about like the education system, the medical system, the justice system, the political system. Everything is coming crashing down. And when everything comes crashing down like that, a lot of us can feel like our identities are going through a major recalibration and transformation. We can even feel like we're going through burnout. And you can really start to kind of feel very ungrounded because you don't have anything to hold on to. So, if that's something that you're going through, or if you just feel very confused about where you stand in the world and you feel like there's nothing under your feet, no path or no known guidance that you can follow, I think that maybe this is like an interesting topic for you to listen to because I think that we're going through a massive, massive transformation, specifically right now. Like, I think in general, the last few years have been probably some of the most transformational times we've been in ever. But I think specifically right now, this year, and in this moment, we're going through such a massive breakdown in societal systems and just like a systemic level collapse of everything we've ever known. And we're kind of sweeping away the last remnants of all of this performative culture, this culture of like power dynamics, hierarchy, and just fakeness. A lot of us, if you're watching this video, you're probably somebody who, from a very young age, you could just kind of notice and sense the level of disconnection in this world and how so many people are constantly masking. So many people are operating from, these superficial dynamics of needing external validation and operating through images and just wanting social status and power and wealth just for the purpose of exerting power over one another, as opposed to living in a world that is truly authentically connected, where people's intentions feel pure and where, it's a safe, emotionally connected communal environment. We don't really have that. And a lot of us, like even myself, I feel ever since I was a kid, but especially in like high school and into college when I started to become more aware of these things, I started to feel a lot of burnout. And that's kind of like the topic that I wanted to talk about hand in hand with the system collapse. But essentially when systems start to collapse and slash or when you start to become aware of how dysfunctional our systems are, that's when you experience burnout. And so I guess first to kind of identify like what these systems are and what they're made of. So I always think about institutions like schools because that's sort of the first place that we go when we get indoctrinated and just in life in general. And it's it happens in very subtle ways. So you go to school. I mean, it happens in obvious ways too, which is like, you're kind of taught to like fear authority and you're told to just like shut up and don't ask too many questions, but also don't be too quiet. But like, listen to the teacher, but also at the same time, like have your own opinions. And it's just a lot of this like very one-dimensional linear thinking. And even when you think about the concept of like constantly taking tests and exams, like they only test duality. Um, in the sense that like an answer is right or wrong, something is good or bad, but it doesn't really encourage like contradictory thinking and the ability to perceive two polar opposite truths at the same time, right? And obviously like kids struggle to understand these topics, but these aren't even things that are really that explored, at least when I was in school, from what I can remember. I'm sure things have changed now, but there's a lot of indoctrination that happens in school, right? Schools are one example of these systems that I'm talking about, where there's a lot of this low-lying, underlying level of fear that you're kind of just expected to fit into, right? You have to perform in a certain way. There's a hidden curriculum, in essence, is what I'm saying, in institutions, in the medical field, in the justice system, in the world of business, everywhere. There's a hidden curriculum, which is that we all have to silently, like, we don't talk about it, but we're all going to silently sort of act out of fear, right? We're all going to perform, we're going to put a mask on, we're going to take on these, unjust ideals and pretend and dress it up and pretend like, they're actually just ideals. We're going to act like we're working in the name of equality, when in reality we're just kind of seeking out power. And we're going to follow all of these rules, right? We're going to create a hierarchy. Like in schools, you're kind of taught to fear authority, and then also all these like different hierarchies start to become birthed through the fear, right? Because when you feel fear, you need to have kind of like a hierarchy, because when you are embodying the energy of fear, you are externalizing your power, right? And in the essence of everything that I'm trying to say is that every single one of these systems that I mentioned, the very underlying truth that is like at the core of all of this is victimization slash externalizing the power from the people that are in these systems. So convincing these people that the power lies outside of them, right? And so when you convince people that the power lies outside of them, they start to operate out of fear. They start performing, they start masking, they start trying to climb over each other's, heads to get to the top of the pyramid. They start to kind of engage in all of these behaviors that are very, very dysfunctional and are the exact opposite of how we were designed to be and act as human beings, because it's all a game to keep you stuck in the fear cycle, right? Because as long as you're stuck in fear and as long as you're staying searching for some sort of power outside of yourself, you're never going to have the ultimate realization that, holy shit, the power is actually inside of myself and I can actually break out of this cycle without needing anything outside of me, right? That's the whole illusion. And medicine, even the medical field, will make you think that through the persistent, seeking of answers and solutions outside of yourself. That's not to say that medicine and, different therapies are not helpful. They definitely 100% are. But a lot of times we miss the mark when it comes to the humanity and the, more psychological or even spiritual side of medicine, which is like the person, like the person and the soul that's sitting right in front of you. And this is apparent in every single system. I think the school system is kind of where we all become indoctrinated as a whole. But after that, doesn't matter where you end up going, whether it's college or ending up in a certain career, like every single system has that underlying paradigm that I just described within it. And if you're like a highly sensitive individual, or maybe you're just for whatever reason born very aware, or if you're neurodivergent, or if you resonate with like giftedness in any way, you're probably somebody who picks up on a lot of these social like games way faster, and you picked up on these systems a long time ago. And so tying this into the concept of burnout, which is what I was initially wanting to bring up, is that there comes a time where you realize that these systems are completely nonsensical. And not only are they nonsensical, but they're the complete opposite of how you were designed to be, right? And so there comes a time where the pressure of constantly having to perform and constantly have to give, and ignore your needs and self-abandon yourself and self-sacrifice yourself and act like you don't care about anybody and just kind of dehumanize everyone, including yourself, just to get to the top, even though you get to the top and then you don't feel happy anyways. Like that whole game becomes really, really tiring to your nervous system as a whole. And that's when we experience burnout. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because we never really talk about burnout. Like the problem with the whole topic of burnout, not just mental health, but I mean spiritually as well, is that we're doing a great job by bringing attention to it and talking about what it is, what it feels like, and, the experience of your nervous system being fatigued, fried, experiencing anxiety, depression, loss of meaning, feeling disconnected, lonely, all of these things. Like, great, we've identified it, but we still are in like this victimized mindset. And so, like, this is a little annoying to hear if you're like in the medical field, but like we always talk about a biopsychosocial model of assessing our patients, like in psychiatry and psychology, which is that you always want to think about the biological aspects of why the person is presenting the way they are. So genetic predisposition, family history, that kind of thing. Then you want to think about psychological. So that's trauma, life experiences, all of that kind of fun stuff. And I think we've done a great job at both of those two things as a society and as a collective, recognizing that both of these two things really impact people's health. But what I think we really still struggle with is that third piece, which is social, which I think we are beginning to become aware of now. But the social side of things is understanding these systems that I'm talking about, right? And the impact of these systems on people, because we're human beings and we don't exist in vacuums, right? It's like really funny because I feel like we think that we're human beings and so we're like separate from nature. But like in nature, every single animal and every single organism that exists has an ideal environment. And when you take it out of the ideal environment, if you take a fish out of water, it dies, right? Human beings, exactly the same. Like it's not like this burnout thing is not like this crazy magical concept. It's very natural. It's exactly how we were designed. Is like our minds and our psyches were meant to crash and burn when we're so out of alignment with how we're meant to be. And in that essence, like the psyche is just as self-healing and self-rejuvenating as the physical body, right? Because it's in the meltdown, it's in the disintegration. There's a term called positive disintegration, which is basically just the concept that when you start to feel like your psyche is breaking down, and your identity is collapsing and you're kind of going through this like, system meltdown, there's a necessary disintegration that's actually positive, because after that identity kind of crashes out, it rebuilds itself on a stronger foundation and in a way that's healthier, and will actually propel your life in a more positive direction. And that's called positive disintegration, right? So anyways, burnout has the potential for this positive disintegration experience. But if we want to really allow ourselves to heal as a society, we really need to talk about the social aspect and really talk about these systems, because I'm very annoyed and frustrated at like always talking about burnout. Like, here's how you prevent burnout, exercise, eat healthy, talk to your friends, etc., etc. But it's like that's still placing the pressure on the individual. We're still not talking about the system that created this experience for burnout in the first place. And to me, that's really, really fucking frustrating, because it's like we're never going to heal this burnout problem. Like everything is, it's like we're pretending like we're wanting to heal, but we're not actually like healing. We're just faking it, right? Like we're never going to actually heal until we talk about how all of these systems are built off of fear, shaming people, inadequacy, inequality, and like just total disconnection from the essence of being a human being. And we act like that has no long-term consequences, right? But I think that, getting back to my original point, which is that we're at this point in time where this transformation is like inevitable and you can physically see it, right? So like a lot of us have been on this path for a long time, but I think now, like even people who are not on this path of spiritual, learning or self-actualization, even those people are starting to recognize how all of our systems are failing us, and they're built off of lies and illusion. And it's like just massive brainwashing that's going on. And that's a really special moment in time, but you can also feel like you're losing yourself, because it's basically like that burnout that's happening on a really collective level that I was talking about, which is like we've reached the point where our systems are all at max capacity of what they could have possibly offered us. And all of our nervous systems are like breaking down, and it can look like on the outside like we're going to a really dark place as a collective society. You're seeing so many things happen. And yes, I'm not denying that. Like it's tough to see that. It's tough to see like all the violence and, everything looking like it's going backwards. But maybe I'm being optimistic. Um, but I think that it's part of this purging process. I think that we are going through a positive disintegration as a collective, and these systems are coming crashing down. And because these systems are coming crashing down, it's kind of like a cycle, because our nervous systems already had enough, and now these systems are coming crashing down. So it creates more instability within our nervous systems, because it's, even though it was toxic, it's like an abusive relationship, right? It's like all we've known. We were just born into it. We were thrown into school and taught that these are like the social and, political dynamics that we have to just adjust to. And some of us were never really good at adjusting to that anyways, especially if you're like neurodivergent, like you really struggle to adjust to those dynamics. And I would say that if you fall into that group, not just of neurodivergence, but just being somebody who really has struggled in your um, beginning life with adjusting to the frequency of this like world, and adjusting to the fakeness, and adjusting to the performance, and adjusting to pretending like you're a careless human being. If you've struggled to do that, I really want to tell you that we are now at a point, like we've reached a threshold point where those of us who were never able to conform in the old world are now being asked to come up and lead in this new world, right? Because we are the ones who have had the practice, the wisdom, the self-reflection, the insight and the vision to be able to see what a lot of people were not able to see. And that's not to say that that's better or worse than anybody else. It just is what it is, right? Like a lot of us have spent a huge chunk of our lives just like on the sidelines trying to observe and understand why human beings are the way that they are, and like how do I fit into this world. And no matter how much you try to fit, it seems like you never can fit. And you just seem to be like such an awkward piece to the puzzle that you just like cannot like shove yourself in and like make yourself fit into the picture, right? But all of a sudden now, like every system has collapsed and now none of that shit is working. And it's a really, really positive time to be a human being, in my opinion, or at least to be a human being on the path that we're on right now, because it means that we get to come in and we get to focus on the rebuilding, right? Like we're the ones who are rebuilding it. Like we're the ones who have that really strong connection, insight, the ability to touch, the feeling of human connection, these spiritual truths, wisdom, authenticity, individuality, and abundance, like the feeling of true abundance and equality and empathy and all of these things that we're like majorly lacking as a society. So, yeah, anyways, all of that to say that if you're going through it, we really need to focus on maintaining coherence during a time of like self-combustion on a societal level. And to do that means that you kind of have to learn to stop relying on the external validation, and you have to find some sort of a stillness and insight within yourself to stay focused to a vision, right? Like ask yourself, okay, if all of this stuff is crashing down, if my nervous system is all over the place, if I feel like I don't have anything under my feet, like what can I build? What can I create? If everything's dying, something has to be rebirthing itself, right? So what can I use myself to build in this world? And likely, like if you're watching this video, it's going to be something that you've had your whole life, probably something that made you not fit in your whole life, and something that kind of was like the antithesis to the whole system and structure that has existed for your whole life, and something that you always felt like made you not able to fit in is suddenly going to be the thing that allows you to weave the web of this new world. So that's something to be excited about, but I feel like I just wanted to talk about that whole topic of like burnout and how it relates to these greater social systems, and that like it was designed to self-explode is the thing. Like these systems, when something is operating out of fear and ego, it is not my belief that that's sustainable. Yeah, you might be able to sustain it for dozens, hundreds of years, but there is a point where it will self-implode because fear cannot sustain itself. It can only sustain itself for so long because as human beings, we are divine in nature at the end of the day, right? So there is going to be a part of us, there's going to be an intelligence within us that wakes itself up through all of that darkness. And for whatever reason, it's like the wound is where the light comes in, right? At some point, there's enough heaviness and enough baggage that your nervous system is holding that something cracks. And in that cracking, there's like this insight and this level of awakening that happens. And that's kind of, I think, what we're going through right now as a collective. And I really feel that we just kind of passed this like major threshold, and we're going to be entering this rebuilding phase and this massive just like boom of creativity and building a new life in a new world. But it begins with, maintaining your cohesiveness and then trying to understand, what it is that you can actually build, which is like a whole other topic. But yeah, I'm curious if you like if you've when in your life did you experience burnout, and what insights did you get from it? How did it change the course of your life, and what did you do to kind of keep yourself grounded within these systems? Because as somebody who's like in the medical field, I struggle with having been in institutions for a really, really prolonged time. Like I'm almost 27, I'm still in school. So like I've spent my whole life pretty much in school. And so I don't really know my life outside of these institutions that are always trying to have this hidden curriculum and brainwash you in some ways or condition you in some ways or just make you feel small. I don't know what that's like. And so I've had to employ a lot of practices in my own life to keep myself grounded and to have distance from these institutions and make sure that my identity never gets wrapped up in school or, the academic hierarchy or that world. But I'm curious if anybody else has similar experiences and like what you have done in your life or just what realizations you've had when it comes to the systems that you've been part of, and how you've allowed yourself to remain in those systems, but in a way that's still true and authentic to you. Because I think that's the direction that we're going in, is rebuilding new systems that are built in authenticity. But before we can get to that, ultimate end goal, we have to first withstand the collapse that's happening right now and continue to move forward and pick up the pieces. So yeah, drop your insight in the comments. But hopefully that helps somebody if you're feeling like you're going through burnout or your nervous system is really going crazy, because I feel like we're definitely in a pivotal time in this human history. But yeah, that's all I got, guys. I shall see you in the next video. Bye.